welcome back to Arbitrary 20. We just did a session 0 of Daggerheart, and we're going to go ahead and talk about our first impressions. So I'll pass it over to Will for our first one.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to be the GM for this particular campaign we're doing. It's just going to be like a mini campaign to just test it out. The biggest thing that I think kind of stood out to me immediately is the hope-fear system, which is like, I think the main thing of Daggerheart is the hope fear. And so the idea, if you haven't read it, is that instead of rolling a d20 like in most of these types of TTRPGs, you roll 2 d12s. One is hope, one is fear, whichever is higher kind of influences the roll. So then you add them together, that determines success, failure, and then whichever is higher influences hope or fear, which is basically outcome with even better, and then outcome with like a caveat. I think that it's just a great system in general. I love the whole success and better, and then and then success with caveat, or like a failure with caveat. But the issue that I think that leads to is the fear system itself, which is whenever one rolls with fear, they immediately have, like the GM gets a fear that they can just spend to kind of make the party's life worse.
Yeah, the adversarial nature of it, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Between DM and player, for sure, is going to come up in this a lot.
Yeah.
One thing that I do like is it is roleplay heavy.
Yeah.
It is extremely roleplay heavy. Like, between 5e and Daggerheart, there's not a lot of similarities. There's a few, but it's more like, this is more roguelike. Decks and the cards and the character builders. And
yeah, they took inspiration from a lot of different systems.
Yeah.
One thing that also I think could sort of, backfire or feel bad with the fear system is that like half the time you succeed, there's still going to be some sort of negative consequence. Because theoretically it should be like 50-50 hope and fear.
Right.
Yeah. I like the system in some ways, but I think the biggest issue that I could see it, and I think one of the bigger issues of Daggerheart in general, is it's really easy to become GM versus player, where the player's trying to do something cool and the GM decides at that point's the time to use a fear, which is just basically they spend that resource to impose some, not necessarily disadvantage because that's its own thing, but impose something on the party. And it can become tricky really fast, and there's no mechanical way to fix that or prevent that.
Yeah, I think there was one of the races that can take a stress instead of giving the GM a fear, but even then that's going to very slightly mitigate it. And I mean, the whole system kind of seems like, you definitely want to play this with people you know well, I think.
Yeah. Who are your friends?
I thought,
for sure.
Because I noticed a similar thing with the experience system, potentially breakable, and the example I thought of here was you could just put something like Battle Mage, and that's very easy to justify.
Yeah.
Assuming your DM approves it, you can just spend a hope to get pluses to anything in combat.
Right. I do think it's a cool part of the system, but very game-breaking.
Oh, I like it too. I think they should find some way to balance it a little bit better and make it less GM approval, but I do really like that you get a direct mechanical benefit from your backstory.
Yes.
That's very interesting.
Overall kind of philosophy of the game, and it'll tell you outright, is fiction first, which I like. As a GM, I'm a very story-focused type of GM, so I was really excited when I saw this for the first time. There's a line though, and I feel like they might be over too hard on the GM and player figure it out side of the line.
A little too rules light.
A little too rules light. I am a huge proponent of kind of crunchier systems. I like Pathfinder, both first and second edition. I like 3.5, stuff like that, where you are adding numbers and you need a calculator to bring to your session. I like that. And I like this too, but the rules keep things from getting too out of hand, but they can be exploited. Whereas in this type of system that's a little bit more rules light, things can get out of hand if the GM maybe doesn't know what they're doing. I think this is meant to be a beginner tabletop RPG, and I honestly think they're doing the opposite.
Yeah, I think it could definitely use some more clarity, I guess. There were some abilities that you read and it's you're not even 100% sure how it works, and it's half of it's left up to the GM. I think they should, by default, define things a little bit more, and then if the GM and the players want to play it a little bit more loosely, they can totally do that. But for the beginners who don't completely understand, it's definitely better to have it more defined, I think.
Coming into it from being main like 5e player, like coming into it wasn't too difficult to understand because some of the things kind of lined up and matched up a little bit. But a new player to a TTRPG might be a little more difficult than jumping into 5e.
It just kind of depends on like what experiences you have prior, probably. But
yeah. What I will say this system does really well, in my opinion, is character creation.
So good.
I was surprised, not to talk about the rules themselves, but like the way it does it. I love the card system. I mean, I'm a Magic the Gathering player, so I don't know, throw some cards in front of me with a bunch of text on the bottom half and I'm immediately going to have a good time. So,
cards of life.
You know, like maybe I'm just predisposed to it, but kind of having like a deck of cards that is your character was kind of cool. It's kind of like Slay the Spire or like Inscription, you know, not like Magic the Gathering necessarily, but I kind of liked its way of, instead of you having a list of abilities, you kind of have a deck of cards you can play.
Higher levels, you get to change those out and build loadouts and stuff with them too,
which is different hands,
which is pretty cool.
And you can like pay to swap them out.
It's like pay a stress or something. I have to look, but I have it in front of me, but I'm not going to sit and search for it.
Yeah, the HP and stuff. I mean, we really didn't get into like combat or anything today. We basically just did session 0 character building, character creation, and like backstory manufacture. But combat is going to be a little weird, I think. All of us coming from 5e, you know, there's not. You said there wasn't any tiles. Like no tiles.
Oh no!
They kind of do like generalized ranges, right. But yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see like the scaling of the combat, like how the defenses and everything. Damage lines up.
Yeah. I am a little leery, whatever you want to call it, of the action tracker system. So the idea is that instead of initiative, which most TTRPGs have, you place a token every time someone does something, and you don't have a limit to that. It's just as soon as someone rolls with fear, it flips to the GM side, and then when the GM rolls with fear, it flips back to the players. I could see that getting broken fast, especially with a new group of players where you have one player who, you know, really wants to play and they're really excited, you know, and through no fault of their own, they just want to keep whacking people with a sword. You know, I mean, like, I'm not, hey man, generic human fighter player over here, so, you know, I get it. But I just feel like there's a lot of, like, if you can convince your GM to do something, like if you have high charisma IRL, you can get away with a lot in this
if
in
you
this
got
system.
a little tenner in your back pocket, you know?
Something like for me, it's a box of Oreos, you know?
There's also the potential of, like, I guess it goes kind of back to the, like, play it with people you know probably thing. Like, you could potentially step on other people's toes a little bit with this. And, like, potentially take multiple turns in a row or, like, you know, things like that. Or, you know, like, 3 people go on one side of the table and, like, the other side of the table doesn't get to do anything before it switches and things like that.
Yeah, I could see it becoming an issue fast for someone, especially for a GM who, like, maybe isn't the most, like, strong personality, you know, or maybe if you have a player who's, like, you know, like I say, like, through no fault of their own, just really into it.
Just a shy player, too, has a hard time speaking up.
Yep, has the exact opposite issue.
Yep.
Yeah. So what else do you guys like about it?
Dude, this app, the Daggerheart Nexus, I love this shit.
Daggerheart, not Dragonheart, but yeah.
Oh, did I say Dragonheart?
That's a movie from the 80s. Oof. It's okay.
Daggerheart. The Daggerheart Nexus is great.
Yeah.
It almost, I'm going to say it looks better than D&D Beyond at this point. Like, well thought out, well placed, little itemized things.
Yeah. As a D&D Beyond hater, okay, someone who
paper character sheets.
I don't have paper character sheets, but I have a fillable PDF, and I have run with that since 2014. I do not like D&D Beyond. It makes things easy, but anyway, I really liked the Nexus. I was surprised. It was very not only intuitive, but it was able to, like, hey, what can I do on a downtime? You click downtime, and it tells you all the things you can do. Things like that. I I like it a lot. Makes it very accessible.
I mean, I think it functions about the same as D&D Beyond. I think it just seems like simpler and more convenient because the system is a little bit more like
simple and
like,
convenient.
I'll give you that
There's
one.
less that they have to put on there.
I agree with you for
but
sure.
I also like it a lot, and I'm super glad that they had it like right at the start of the open beta. Like compared to like one D&D and the other like creator-made TTRPGs, this is the first one that has like a very good digital character sheet just from the get-go. So
Yep.
I like how accessible it is.
Which is
like
all,
that.
it's all subject to change too, which I enjoy. Like WotC did the whole, hey, we're going to give you a survey so we can change the game, and then maybe they're going to change the game. But I know for a fact if there are good ideas that players throw out there, the people at Critical Role and Daggerheart and all of them are going to implement it in their game. They're going to find a way. So the fact that they work with their community off the rip from the get-go, love it.
Yeah. I did want to ask you guys, what are your thoughts on the domain system?
I really like it.
We haven't played yet, so I don't know how things are going to connect or like, you know, because a couple of our characters share 1 or 2 domains, right?
Well, I think that's the interesting thing is someone who can come up with infinite multi-class builds in D&D. It feels like you're almost multi-classing from the start. Like you get 2 different paths to go, regardless of what class you pick. And then potentially with multi-classing, once you get to level 5, you could potentially access 4.
I kind of like it too, in that same way. The biggest thing that I've seen people requesting on like Reddit and stuff on those types of forums is to just get rid of classes altogether and just pick 2 domains. And just have that. Like, so, you know, what are your thoughts on that as an infinite multi-classer? or whatever.
Interesting suggestion, but a lot of the like subclass features and even just the base class features are pretty interesting too, but I guess you could just transform those into like more choices, right? And then so you could even have like you pick your 2 domains, you pick like the wizard base class features with like a warrior subclass, and you made like a spellblade or something.
Yeah.
I could see it being kind of helpful or being interesting. I don't know.
I feel like that might be a little bit going back to like the whole new player thing. I feel like that might have not enough structure for a new player. Like they wouldn't know where to go if they want like they show up and they just want to play the standard human fighter. Like they don't know which they don't know which direction to go. So maybe they could actually what they could do is they could like have all the base classes as options, but then they could also add in a build your own options. Pick the 2 domains, pick the base and the subclass.
I believe there is a section in the
and that could be really interesting.
The book that's about making custom things like that. I have to double check, but you know that is possible.
I think I saw a post on something like that. I think there's like 9 classes in the game right now.
Something like
with
that.
the amount of domains, there's currently potential for 36 different classes, which is kind of
That's
insane.
crazy.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you got
If
the
you did
bard,
all the different combinations.
got the bard, the druid, the guardian, the ranger, the rogue, the seraph, the sorcerer, the warrior, and the wizard.
Yeah.
It's a lot to
I like
choose
them.
from.
Potential for 4 times.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess that just gives them a lot of potential for like supplement books and add-ons.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to see where they go with it. You know, I mean, like for example, you know, Tasha's was like such a big deal to 5th edition because it added in this whole other class. And imagine if that was happening all the time, where it was like, oh wow, you want to be an artificer? Wow. Well, now you can be like 6 different types of artificers.
That is something that I wish they did more of with 5th edition, is release more classes.
Yeah.
You and me both, Chief. You and me both.
I think the last class they added was Matthew Mercer's Blood Hunter, right?
Well,
The Blood Hunter and the Artificer. Well, Blood Hunter wasn't even technically official, but yeah, so that's even with the unofficial one. That's 2 classes added to the game, somewhat officially. Yeah.
How many years? You know.
They tried to do the Mystic, but it never made it out of Unearthed Arcana.
They decided to really do more focusing on subclasses, which isn't a bad way to go. I just don't like it as much. As a weirdo who likes weirdo RPGs, I would love to see like something like prestige classes show up in Daggerheart.
Yeah.
Where maybe it's like, and again, you know, multi-classing is already a thing, so maybe it just wouldn't really happen, but I think it'd be interesting to see if like they could incorporate, because, you know, Matthew Mercer himself has kind of said that he likes, you know, Pathfinder and like 3.5 and stuff, so it'd be interesting if they try and bring in stuff like that, you know, where prestige classes or
And a
those
prestige
types of
class is
things.
like a second subclass, basically, right? A class that
More
you
like
get at higher levels. Right?
It's basically it's a multi-class that you multi-class into it at a high level. That is generally better than a starter level, but you can only do it at a higher level. So you know, we'll see. I don't know.
Could be interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it is cool that this system has like easy expansion, I guess. Like with the domains already in place, it's like half the work is already done for them to make a new class.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more likely to happen probably, right?
That's fair. Now you're only coming up with like 2 or 3 things per class instead of
the entire
50.
thing from scratch.
Yeah.
It looks like D&D, but it's not. It's something completely different, and
It's very strange.
it looks and feels enjoyable. I'm excited to play it.
If Pathfinder is the rules heavy version of D&D, the crunchy version of D&D, this is like the opposite of that.
This is
I could
D&D
see-
light.
Pretty much.
Well, I
yeah.
wouldn't even call it light because light implies like less.
Yeah,
I feel like it's
still
more
a
just
lot.
like the rules light. So you have like your big 3 of like Daggerheart, which is like rules light, 5th edition, which is a very good balance, and then Pathfinder, which is very much more crunchy.
Right.
I could see that being a thing in the future, and I'd love to see it.
It's also easily malleable, so the DM, like when it says work with your DM, like the whole system changed and new things can be added. DMs can ask you to roll D20s instead of D12s. Like it's not that
And I
difficult.
wouldn't, but like you
You
can.
wouldn't. You can. That's the thing. It's like you can change and manipulate things to
Yeah,
how you want to play a game instead of having set core rules. You
I get
know.
what you mean.
I mean, yeah, you can always modify whatever you want, but it is definitely a bit easier in this system to change things around.
Yeah.
Modify.
Yeah.
I did have a couple other cons. I was curious what you guys thought about. First off, I don't really like the death system.
The death. You explained the death system to me, and it was a little weird.
I'm not a fan either, if I'm being honest with you.
So for those who don't know, if you die, you have 3 different options. You can go out in a blaze of glory, you get an automatic critical success on whatever you do, and then you immediately die. You can leave it up to chance, and it's kind of 50-50 what happens, or you can go unconscious and take a permanent loss of one of your hope slots, a scar, and then you don't die, but you're unconscious for the next while, you know. And I just dislike it because it feels like it lacks a lot of risk to me. Like if you don't want to die, you can just choose not to die, and even after you take all the possible scars that you can, you retire that character, so they still are like within the world. Like
Yeah.
there's no like 100% risk. Like you can't just get extremely unlucky. It's never completely up to the dice, which I feel like is one of the coolest things about tabletop game.
Because the chance
Yeah.
of rolling a 20-sided die is invigorating.
Yeah.
For a gambler
Yeah.
like myself, it is my fix, y'all.
This is my gambling. That and magic packs.
Yeah.
I would agree. I like to run, not necessarily horror or whatever, but like I want there to be risk. I want you to like really kind of be like, wow, I might die. You know, or my character hopefully might die. You know, not you. I love the Blaze of Glory. I think that that's great. Where it's like you drop to 0 and like
You can do one
you
thing.
can just choose to like I choose to die and then but I get to do like one cool thing. I think my biggest issue is with the risk it all option. I think that if you just like go unconscious, but there should be some rules for like if you get hit while you're unconscious you die or something like that. There should be like more risk to the avoiding death thing in my opinion. But I really don't like the risk at all. Which sucks because I watched the kind of the Daggerheart video and that was like Matt and I don't remember the other guy's name. His Spencer. They're like big things. It was like, oh wow, risk it all. I don't because I don't like that you can come back at like full hit points.
Yeah.
You should. That's nuts to me. That's ridiculous. You should come up at like 1 or 2 at the max. And they're like, no, the value of your hope die. That could be 12 hit points. In a game where you only have like 6 hit points.
Yeah, we made level 2 characters, and I have 6 HP right now.
Yeah. And now it's also stress. So it's like hit points and stress. And so I get it. But man, for me, I think it would need to be like roll a
I think that
d6.
coming back on a critical thing is okay. I mean, it's like an 8% chance with 2d12s rolling the same thing, but I just don't like that you can choose to be immortal if you really want.
Well, what I just mean, so
essentially,
yeah, on
It's up to
the
your
risk
DM's
it all.
discretion.
Yeah, at the risk it all. So you roll your duality dice. If your hope is higher, you gain a bunch of hit points. It's the value of the hope. And then if your fear is higher, you die. And then if they're tied, you crit, basically.
Yeah.
That I'm fine with. Critting is something that I feel like should be awesome in every system. I hate confirming a crit. It's the worst thing in the world. So, I'm down for like crit, you decide to risk it all, you crit. Let's do this. I don't know. I feel like it should be like 50-50. You die, you come back at like 2 HP. You know, like maybe all your stress is cleared because like what worst thing could happen, but like it should not be, you know, the value of your hope die when your hope die is a D12.
Yeah.
You know, on average, you gain back all your hit points.
What is my hope?
Well, at lower levels, yeah.
Well,
I think you can gain, like, is it 1? I don't know how higher levels go, but I think in the lower levels, like 1 to 4, I think you can gain like 1 hit point per level up.
Yeah.
If you want.
it's an option though, so like,
Yeah.
you know, it could always change. And I do like how the hit points work in this. We didn't really talk about it, but the damage threshold thing. So basically, there are 3 damage thresholds, and then if you exceed that amount of damage, it knocks off that amount of hit points of whichever threshold you're at.
Yeah,
I
so
kind of like that.
minor, major, and severe.
Mm-hmm.
And in between, it's like 1 to 3 hit points you lose.
Yes.
Yeah.
I kind of like that. I think it's a cool way of doing it. I haven't really seen that before. Maybe that's just due to lack of experience or whatever. But I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I think it's a cool idea. It'll be interesting to see how it plays. For me, it's hard to really judge it without seeing it in action.
Yeah, we'll definitely do a final
Yeah.
impressions at the end of the campaign,
Yep.
which will, you know, it might just be
Which makes
everybody
more
cussing me
sense
out.
with like your HP value at
Mm-hmm.
lower levels, which is like 6. So if I get hit for 16, that's severe damage for me. I take 3 HP, you know, of damage. It's half my health. So it's like, I think it'll work. I just think it'll be, for everybody, a learning process.
Yeah,
to
it just depends
kinda-
on how common severe damage is, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I can do, with an attack of mine, I can do major damage to myself on a high enough roll. Can't do severe, but I can definitely do a decent amount of hit points to whoever I'm up against, or myself.
My last issue was with like once per session abilities. They seem a little bit table or like campaign dependent in terms of how viable they'd be. My example was Safe Harbor from the Seaborn community. Yeah, so once per session, when you take a short or long rest, you can take an additional downtime action. So if you're going through like 10 days in your session of like a travel montage, not that great, but if you take 2 short rests and a long rest over 3 sessions, like a rest per session, then it becomes really good.
Yeah.
And like that's
Yeah.
it's kind of depend.
I'm not a fan of it either. I've seen worse though.
Yeah.
The worst I've ever seen was level up abilities, where you can use it a certain amount of time per level. That was the worst. So like at least it's not that bad.
Yeah.
We can talk about what that is outside of this, so we don't take a bunch of time. But
Yeah. I'm not sure of an exact solution because like I see what they're going for. Like they want it to be used like somewhat often, but like I don't know.
Maybe it's like
that-
roll a d4, and if you get 2, you know, like maybe if you get like a 4, you can do it, or something like that, where you can't do it every time, but you can do it sometimes. Or maybe it's once per.
It might be just easier to balance it off of rest still.
Yeah, maybe
but,
once
I
per
don't know.
3
Because they
rests.
just, I mean, they just added another caveat. It's like short rest, long rest session.
Yeah.
So,
You know?
yeah, maybe that's just part of it. Like some abilities are rest, some abilities are sessions, and that's just how it is. You know,
Yeah.
like you sometimes don't get a rest, you sometimes don't get as many sessions, or you
Right.
sometimes get more sessions.
I do like the scar thing though. I do think that, for example, in 5th edition, the one that we play the most, you can do like a springboard 0-1 0-1 0-1 0-1,
Yeah.
and you're fine. And it's like you're taking hits, man. Like, you know, if you don't get hit with more than like, you know, if you have 70 hit points, right, which is, you know, reasonable at a fairly high level. If you're getting hit with, you know, 60 hit points, 60 damage, I should say, and then you come back up to 1, you can take another 60 damage and still be alive, right?
Yeah, a scar system probably does have some kind of place in like
Yes.
a death system, but I don't think it should be because you chose not to die.
Yeah.
To me, it should be. I like debuffs, you know, as a kind of a mechanic. I could see. Personally, maybe it's like, hey, you know, this is a very role play system, so this is, you know, maybe this will be my suggestion for the beta, is like, instead of cross off your hope, maybe you add an experience like debuff or something like that, where you know, maybe it's a fear or a trauma or something like that, where it's, instead of, you know, maybe you got hit by a lightning bolt or something, and so it's like, okay, now you have a fear of lightning, and so whenever a thunderstorm happens, you get disadvantage on certain things, or you take a -1.
Yeah, potentially could be if you roll with fear in a certain situation, then you lose stuff.
Right.
I think it could be that and the hope slot too.
Yeah, and you know, and like I say,
That actually, like the experience thing, actually might work.
Yeah.
With negative experiences and positive experiences.
right. So I like scars. I think that you shouldn't be allowed to springboard like you do in 5th edition. And, you know, a lot of TTRPGs, I'm not saying that it's just a 5th edition problem, but I hate springboarding where you're 0-1, 0-1, 0-1, and you're fine afterwards. And it's just like, oh, I went to sleep. I was hit with 16 lightning bolts, but I went back to 1 each time.
Yeah.
You know, someone stuffed a good berry in my gullet and I was fine. So, you know, I think there should be a system to kind of
we've
keep
all
that
seen
from
it before.
happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also is just like different styles of games too. There's people who do like permanent damage to their character, and some people who don't. So, yeah.
Fair. You know, that's a good
Being
one.
such a role play heavy system, like permanent damage would have a place.
I think a trauma.
Not like permanent HP damage.
Yeah, the experience
like,
thing would be pretty cool. Yeah.
But the positive and negative experience.
Maybe that'll be my homebrew for the mini campaign we're doing. If you fall to 0, you take a trauma.
I mean, we're going to throw that back Matthew Mercer's way, and maybe he'll give us credit for it.
Let's do it. I think that's all I have.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it for me.
All right.
All right.
And with that, yeah, thank you guys for watching, and
Don't forget to brush your teeth.
Like and subscribe, please.
check out the campaign we're doing probably this weekend.
Hey.
Yeah.
Goodbye.